mind me pointing you out. Ruth made a very good point when she said, "Oh, you're the party planner," and I said, "Well, no." And so the first thing I'm going to do is really kind of, it's very easy for me to be knowing what I do and then forget how to actually explain it to people outside of my field. I mean, Tom probably knows that most people outside of theater, when you mention stage manager, they have a completely different idea as to what that is, as to what we know it is. I began as a set designer for theater. I still sort of do it. I haven't this year. You know, started out in the Midwest, went to undergrad, grad school, and came to New York, because that's the place you come for this. Got to assist on a lot of Broadway shows, which was definitely a lot of fun. In 2008, I got involved with, there's a big wedding designer, Preston Bailey, who does a lot of high-profile events. He did Ivanka Trump's wedding back in 2009, but then he's gotten to do a lot of Arab weddings. And in terms of the kind of scale, in terms of what we talk about with events, we're usually talking about huge wedding celebrations, you know, 500-600 guests, and you know, huge amounts of flowers. Like Preston, it tends to be very over the top. This was an event that we did in Bali that was a wedding celebration, and the simplest way to say it is the difference between a wedding planner and a wedding designer is that the wedding planner is the person that you go to when you say, I need to be able to deal with this many guests, we want this sort of food, we love this sort of decor, you know, figure out how all of this is going to happen. And that person coordinates with vendors, they coordinate with any sort of talent that might be singing. They make sure that everything happens so that, in essence, when you're having your wedding, that on the day of, you don't have to think about a single thing. Because, I mean, if suddenly the flowers haven't shown up and the musician is sick, is that something that you would want to deal with on your day of your event? But if you hire someone else, it's their problem. And so it's essentially, wedding planner is the peace of mind, and also if you're just not an organized person, it's the best way to go with that. So from wedding planner to then a wedding designer or an event designer determines how everything is going to look. They go from the ideas that the wedding planner might have, and some wedding planners have a lot of visual ideas, and they translate that into an event, even more to an experience, something outside of just tables and chairs. So we have, this is also similar stuff from the same event. Or this is like a wedding, we created the idea of an after party with a wedding glass chandelier. And actually not one wedding glass chandelier, but 5. All of which were probably about 9 feet tall, had LEDs inside them. And so in terms of even like the scale of the kind of events we do, this was in Indonesia. It was a wedding between like a Chinese nightclub owner and an Indonesian supermodel. And then this even goes into the Arab weddings, which are their own distinct sort of event. This was a 200-foot inflatable bubble tent, which no internal structure. And so I tried to imagine this is basically a big hot air balloon with a, and these are all projections. I mean, throughout the entire event, things were going on. And so this is the kind of scale things would get to in events. I mean, there's a lot of New York event designers who do, like Melissa Rivers, Joan Rivers' daughter. Preston became famous when he did her wedding because he created this huge, he created this huge forest inside a tent. I mean, this one was, I'll say this was the first one I actually got to go to, which was in Kuwait. I have a very full passport. And in addition to which, my fiance is a flight attendant, so between the two of those things. But after 2 years, I decided that I wanted to kind of be my own designer, you know, having come from set design and realizing that over the top really wasn't my style. So I branched off and decided to create my own business, which started off really just doing renderings for wedding planners. There are a lot of planners who, the business has come to a point where clients don't just want to be shown, oh, here's your centerpiece, here's your tablecloth. They really want to say, well, what is the experience of this event going to be? How am I going to perceive this when I come into it? And when people are paying upwards of, well, I don't even know how much because they never tell me, but that they want to really be able to see what they're getting. And my feeling and my kind of motto for my business is, when you're dealing with luxury events, the clients actually deserve, to know what they're getting. Because as creative professionals, we need to be able to. They're kind of trusting us, saying, "Oh, here's all this money now. Make it look beautiful." And then suddenly it's the day of the event, and you need to have something in between that to be able to create that level of trust between you and your client. So a lot of this is my portfolio in regards to events that I've had to put together. This was an Asian-themed Christmas party for a law firm that was in Grand Cayman, and so a part of the parameters of the event was we only had so much to spend in decor. So I came up with the idea of, well, if it's Asian, I love the kind of the paper lantern festival, like the New Year's festival that they have, and these paper lanterns are dirt cheap. And so why don't we just get thousands of them? Why don't we base it off of multiples of a lot of cheap things, but that in the end can look amazingly gorgeous. And so we created different areas, like we call this the Zen Lounge because it was a little more peaceful. But then the food area was like a huge chaotic market. And so each of these start from ground plans I turn them into three-dimensional CAD sculptures, and then bring them into Photoshop where I illustrate these ideas. Like some of these things can take up to like 2 or 3 days. I've spent a week on some sometimes. But all of this is in the computer. Most of the time I'm just doing little thumbnail sketches. This was stuff for Ritz-Carlton. During this time I was doing tenure at a event company in the Caymans. And they wanted to be able to create a collection that they could sell. So now so many destination places, hotels, places in the Caribbean want to be able to sell these ideas for weddings to people coming in on cruise ships, people who are going to be there just for a wedding and a honeymoon and don't mind only having a few choices for what their wedding might look like. This was actually an event that occurred, which was that Nespresso opened a cafe in Soho, and so we created this conceptual idea of, well, they're opening a new coffee house, so why don't we make the coffee house look like one of their Nespresso machines? And so, everything from, the spotlight coming down through the spout where the coffee usually would. And this is also back when I was working for Preston, the idea of like kind of where you go to visit Santa and tell him what you want for Christmas. But this was in Hong Kong, so they wanted it to be a little Western, but then also be a little abstract. And someone else had come up with this idea of like this classical peppermint candy forest, like a Candyland sort of version. And then I said, well, for a modern, what if we made it look like Santa's Lounge? You sit down with a guy in a red velvet jacket, and it's just like, hey, can I have a martini? And let's talk about what I want for Christmas. Which we thought was kind of fun, just to get away from the traditional. This last year, Angel had I'm going to pronounce it wrong because I don't know French. Thierry Mugler, who had done a lot of fashion designing in the 90s, now does a lot of perfumes, and Angel is one of them. They switched their spokesperson from Naomi Watts to Eva Mendez, and so all of this was about the product launch. So sometimes I'm creating these corporate experiences. I do about half and half corporate, half wedding, where it's about creating this experience for the people that are there, whether it's press, celebrities, or such, so that they get a sense of what this brand is about. And let's see, another version of collections for weddings. Like this was for an Infinity event that was done in Pebble Beach. Or a VIP New Year's Eve party at the Wynn Casino in Las Vegas, where they wanted something that could be a really great stage show, but then also have a theme to it, which this was. Was that movie, the Burlesque, the one with?
Sure.
Yeah. It was Moulin Rouge meets.
Right.
Meets striptease, I suppose,
right.
Or Coyote Ugly. So, but also something that I've been going through recently since December was when you're transitioning from like being a set designer and being on your own to trying to create a company. used to be my business card, which was very, as a set designer, you didn't really need to be kind of branded. There aren't really famous set designers. It was just about like being professional looking, clean and making it look clean and professional. But now within the events business, like I'm going to a business conference in June. That's about 250 wedding and event professionals, New York, California, across the world. And in this business, it is that there's a very specific audience that I have where you need to be able to a lot of these people are also style mavens. And so it was that sense of being able to create kind of a new identity that wasn't, that could show kind of luxury, but also show my personality with it. And so recently I had these and a lot of other branding created where it was more being able to give that sense of
nice.
Yeah, high end. Yeah, that was. I spent a few months with with this company trying to create this idea of how can we, and I suddenly read that didn't bring it up. That how can we create this identity for me where, to be very blunt, that most of my people who are going to be my clients are either women from their mid-20s to around their 50s and gay men, and because that's pretty much the people in the profession. And so it was realizing that although I had a particular personality, there was also realizing who my audience was and what they were going to be interested in. So it was both creating something that could seem a little bit like a monogram in calligraphy, but at the same point, I said, but also I needed to have a certain degree of masculinity where they put it silver on black, and I was kind of like, okay, that's pushing out for me, And at the same point, to me, trying to find that fine line between not being over the top, but also to be able to show, that I understand, and have the personality for these kind of high-end and luxury events. Because for me, starting out, I went to the same conference in last November, and it was very productive. I gained a number of clients, a lot more people that know who I am, and I'm going to go back in June and be able to see these people, and the people that I want to work for are going to be able to say, oh, hi, Matt, and it feels good, but it's also, for me, now suddenly realizing, like, when I was freelance, it was very easy to just be like, oh, like I think the first day of the conference, it was in the Caribbean, but I was wearing shorts, and I was sitting there realizing that I was surrounded by these people in business suits, and realizing that I needed to be able to, even though most of the time I'm sitting at my computers, half the time in my pajamas because I'm at home, but that I needed to be able to figure out how to show who I am to the outside world, to the people in my industry. That is not just me putting on a suit and creating a personality for myself. So for me, that's creating this branding. It's definitely been a part of that. I'm in the middle of.
So Matt, how can we be most helpful?
Oh yeah, because I could talk for a half an hour.
How can we be most helpful?
Well,
personally, I'm thinking that I have a contact that we can talk about offline, but
right.
I'm asking somebody, what do you think?
Well, no, it's interesting because it becomes that question of, I was thinking about everything from like PR and social media and those other things, and because I feel like I'm not looking to get brides and grooms. I'm not that person that people go to. It's very much other people in my industry. But I was realizing that in terms of being able to reach out, I want to be able to do more than just send an email that says, oh, here's a link to my website. Like, I have no idea how to create those great kind of HTML emails that look kind of like a web page that you can send out and that look very professional, or maybe social media strategy in a way that isn't just throwing stuff at everyone and being like, hey, look at me, look at me. And so to me, that was realizing that that's where that's some of those pieces that I either haven't dealt with yet or have some ideas, but know that there are people who probably know how to do it much better than I do.
Well, I think we have some web designers and there might be some people who have ideas.
Right. I do have people designing a website for me, but it is that how to then reach that website out to other people.